You're listening to Succeed, Just Let Go, a podcast that'll change how you think and change your life. I'm Willie Horton and I'm a psychologist, been helping people change their lives since 1996. Broadcasting from the French Alps and delighted to have you along. Let's take this week's step in the right direction.
There is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. That means negative thinking is self-destructive. It means that positive thinking is delusional, because there is a third way. And that third way is to experience reality as it is and let the flow of reality and the flow of your own energy in the flow of reality take you to where is best for you. We've covered an awful lot in just those few words, haven't we? For starters, negative thinking is our default way of so-called being. It's our default way of making it through the day. We are designed to think in the negative because it keeps us on our toes, which is a good thing from the perspective of our own survival. We are predisposed to thinking negative thoughts to the point where we left on our own to our own devices for between 12 and 13 hours, there's experiments that prove this, we would end up being negative gibbering idiots. Now, the fact of the matter is that most people are negative gibbering idiots already, and they don't know it because they are unaware, because thinking makes us unaware. Positive thinking as well as negative thinking. The fact that we are predisposed to negative thinking finds its foundations, first of all, in evolution and in the programming that came with the development of our brain, the brain that nature gave us, which is designed, as I said a moment ago, for survival. There's 1.8 million years programming built into the shape of the normally minded person's brain. The second foundational pillar of that negative thinking comes particularly in the third year of our lives, when on top of the 1.8 million years programming that has shaped our brains in a certain way, we take our own very personal set of programs by way of a process that is known as snapshot learning. They are primarily negative snapshots that we take. They are the snapshots that give us our perceived inadequacies in later life, or in all of our adult life until we do something about it. Now, of course, people have perceived strengths as well, but they're all just perceptions to the point where, when all taken together, they form what cognitive psychology calls our conceptual self. The noise in your head, the devious little person, I was going to use another word, the devious little whatever, the devious little so-and-so that is constantly sniping at you, is constantly trying to trip you up. As I said to somebody on a Zoom call earlier this morning, this person who knows least shouts loudest. As a result of which, most people will find their lives to be less than they would like them to be. That is assuming that they have any awareness at all in relation to how their lives are. It's quite probable that the vast majority of people that you will pass in the street today are living in a world of negative thought and unaware that that is where they are living, thinking that that is in fact reality. That reality is characterized by some of the words that I most frequently come across in emails that I receive. Stuck, stressed, anxious. Some will talk about panic, and many will talk about how their lives are stuck because they are procrastinators. Let's deal with all these things in turn. or let's deal with them in one fell swoop, because they are all the result of thought. If you think you're stuck, you are stuck. And you will have the evidence to prove that you are stuck, because you are thinking that you are stuck and have been stuck for a period of time that gives weight to your thinking that you are stuck. Now, when you repeat that sentence back to me or back to yourself, you'll realize the madness of it all. We feel stuck because we're not in a position to change our lives, or we have tried to change our lives and nothing substantial or satisfactory has ever changed. And that is because we are stuck in our own thoughts. Stuck is the way our minds are designed to create our reality, for the simple reason that we are designed to survive. We're not designed to be all that we could be. Because in evolutionary times, being all that we might have been would require us to take risk, and risk was dangerous, life-threatening in those times. As a result of that 1.8 million years of programming that I mentioned earlier on, it is next to impossible for somebody to change their lives whilst using their minds normally with the brain nature intended. As a result of which, when people tell me they are stuck, they can, hand on heart, provide evidence that they are stuck, but it is only as a result of the way in which the mind is stuck in rutted, pre-programmed, repetitive thought. That creates rutted, pre-programmed, repetitive experience of life, rutted, pre-programmed behavior, or should I say misbehavior, because it's all reactive behavior, because it is all automated by this stuck mind, a mind that is mired in thought. Now, if you think you're stuck, and even if you have a vast body of evidence to suggest that you are right, it's only thinking that has you stuck. The thinking that you didn't realize was going on in your head until one day you said to yourself, oh my God, I'm stuck. I've tried to change, but I'm stuck. Or I have changed somewhat, but I'm still stuck. Some people will start out on the journey of self-discovery and realize that they have become stuck. That's only because they think they're stuck. In the same way, as we've discussed before, if you think you're stressed, you are stressed. And it's only because you think you are stressed that you actually are stressed. Life is full of challenges. Everyday life is full of ups and downs. Life is full of pressure. But pressure is not the same as stress. Pressure is real. Deadlines, things I have to do, things that I have to do for and with my children or my loved ones, things that I have to do at work. Life is full of pressures and competing demands. But those pressures and competing demands are not stress. They do not create stress. The stress is created by you thinking about and magnifying as a result of thinking about the real deadlines, the real demands, the real pressures of everyday life. As a result of thinking about pressure and magnifying the pressure, we become less able to deal with the pressure because we're trying to deal with it through the fog of thought that has magnified the pressure, as a result of which the pressure becomes greater, as a result of which I think I'm under a greater level of stress, as a result of which people have heart attacks from stress, which is all as a result of the way in which they're thinking about their lives. Yes, stress is real in terms of what it does to our cardiovascular, immune, and digestive systems. But stress, the origins of stress, are in the mental mind. They are in the brain that nature gave you, which was designed to automatically react to a life-threatening situation, or any situation that your thinking mind perceives to be a life-threatening situation. And that means we see life-threatening situations everywhere. We've talked that subject to death in this podcast. And wouldn't it be wonderful if you could take your stress and bury it? But you don't need to, because it's not real. In the same way as you can fly freely and change your life because you're not stuck, you only think it. In the same way as people will be fearful to the point of panic, as I mentioned earlier on, a word that I have heard a couple of times in recent emails, panicked by the weirdest of thoughts. I'll give you a good one, or a bad one, actually. I got an email from somebody who told me that they were afraid. They were afraid that if they followed the steps that you do follow when you are an online program owner, an owner of the Psychology of Success online program, they were afraid that if they took those steps and nothing happened, they would be even more desperate than they had been when they started the program in the first place. Now, there is some logic in that because many people, most of us, somewhere along the way, have taken steps to change our lives. And as I said earlier on, the change never actually turns out to be what we were striving for. First of all, because we were striving for it. In other words, we thought we had to try to get it. And the one thing that'll stop you getting what you want in life is trying too hard. But secondly, it's fundamentally built into the brain that nature and evolution gave us, that try as we might, we cannot change our lives. So it is reasonable for somebody to say to me, I'm afraid that if I take all these steps, nothing will change, because they have a book of evidence coming from the past that would confirm, but only confirm to their thinking mind, that nothing is going to change now or into the future. As a result of which, that person went on to say, I'm fearful to the point of panic, as a result of which I'm procrastinating, not taking the next step. Now, these are all words I used right at the outset of this episode today. Fear, anxiety, stress, panic, procrastination. I want to deal with panic and procrastination because I can deal with both of those two things at the same time, because they're two sides of the same coin. Somebody will procrastinate because they're afraid that if they didn't procrastinate, they would do something that might require more than their normal level of perceived bravery or courage. And after all of that, nothing might change. So they'll procrastinate. You can see how these are two sides of the same coin. But there's another aspect to procrastination. And it relates to a story I told you in last week's episode with regard to somebody who set up their own business at 58 years of age. Somebody who, as he told me, and as I recounted to you in last week's episode, had to do it in the end. It was the inevitable and obvious next step that he had to take. There was no decision involved, even though people had said to him, oh my God, that was a huge decision that you took. As I said, he explained to them that it was a non-decision, the obvious next thing to do. But what he told me in addition to that was that he had been thinking about setting up his own business for over 10 years. He said, I'm a dreadful procrastinator. I said, well, let's tease this one apart, because perhaps you haven't been procrastinating at all. Perhaps you were only waiting for the perfect moment to do the right thing. I said to him, if you roll back 10 years, and this is a conversation I had about 6 or 7 years ago. I said, if you roll back 10 years to when you first got the urge to set up your own business, that would have been 2006. And his business in the financial wealth management area was a business that would have gone down the toilet in September 2008 as a result of the economic crisis. I said, you would have set up your business at the wrong time. You would have lost your business 18 months later. Now you're setting up your business at the perfect moment? Was it procrastination, or were you just waiting for your own gut instinct to tell you this is the next inevitable step that you have to take, and you need to take it now? People actually often feel proud when they say to me, "Oh, I'm a great procrastinator." In the same way as I said a couple of weeks ago, some parent rang me and said that their child was a great little worrier. These are not badges of honor. They're nothings, actually, because they only come from thought. Everything that is wrong with your life comes from thought. But because we are accustomed to thinking, and we do it repetitively in a patterned fashion daily, we think, and again, that's the rock we perish on, we think that there is nothing we can do about it. And we think that that is always the way it is going to be because we have a track record in thinking that we are right to think that there's nothing we can do to substantially change our lives. Or, if I can put it another way, allow all good things flow into our life. Think about the two sides of another coin there. Think about how what I've just said sits with what I said a moment ago, how everything that is wrong in your life is as a result of thought. Everything that is good in your life is stuff that kind of flows to you. Now, ordinarily, normal people will feel that these things happen by way of coincidence, or some people will call it dumb luck. People who are on a journey of understanding who they really are, free of thought, who are beginning to experience results as a result of taking charge of their state of mind, so they have stopped this repetitive patterned thinking. People on that adventure know that there's no such thing as coincidence, and there's no such thing as dumb luck. It is what is scientifically known as synchronicity. You coming across the right things and the right people in the right way at the right time to prompt you to take the next step forward on an adventure that becomes an experience in the reception of all good things. If you just let yourself take those steps by listening to yourself, and by that I mean by listening to your intuition or gut instinct, which is completely different from your thinking mind. So where have we got to in this episode so far? In summary, all of the things that you think are wrong with your life are only the result of you thinking they are wrong with your life. They may manifest in terms of real difficulties, but they only manifest in terms of real difficulties because all of your actions, which were never real actions at all, they were reactions to the way your thinking mind actually operates, have put you in the position in which you find yourself at the moment. As we said right at the beginning, there is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Where you are now is no guide to where you can be. What happened in the past is no guide to the future. What got you to where you think you are is not going to get you to where you could be if you just let yourself go. Now, if everything bad in your life is the result of thinking, what you have to do is not think. As we've said before, there's a quick route to actually getting to that state of mind where you are flowing rather than thinking. Now, before we go any further, let me explain what I mean by the word flowing, because it is a scientifically researched, vastly scientifically researched state of being, not just state of mind, state of being. It's been researched by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, originally in the University of Chicago back in the 1980s, and that research has been ongoing over the intervening years. People in flow are immersed in what they're doing, and they're just loving it, regardless of what they're doing. Some of the people involved in the flow research originally were working on the automotive production lines in Detroit, apparently mind-numbing jobs, but jobs that they had chosen to immerse themselves in and enjoy. Now, that word enjoy, I've used it a couple of times now, is very important because what enjoy actually means is I'm giving myself joy. There is joy in my life. Now, if there isn't joy in your life at the moment, would you ever get out of the way of the rest of us? Go back to bed, and when you're ready to enjoy yourself, get up again and start living. You start living when you stop thinking. The short route to not thinking is meditation, and that has been researched in detail as well. But I am tripping myself up a little bit here because I wanted to continue talking about flow before we moved on. People who are in flow are immersed in what they're doing. In other words, they're just doing it. They're not thinking about doing it. When they are in that state, time flies when they're having fun. Now, people have often said to me, oh, I've experienced that on the day before I went on holidays. There was stuff that I had been putting off, perhaps procrastinating, who knows. There was stuff that I was putting off that had to be done the day before I went on holidays, stuff that I thought might take a lot of effort or a lot of thinking or a lot of time. And it just got done. Bam, bam, bam. And suddenly I got a load of things done in a quarter of the time that I thought they would take, thought being the operative word there. And wouldn't it be great if I could bottle that kind of focus, that kind of fizz that you get in a situation like that and take a swig of it every morning? And the answer is you can, because what that state is a state of you doing and not thinking. You take a swig of that state of mind every time you meditate to the point where you're swigging it all the time because you have taken a step that 96% of people on this planet have not taken. We talked earlier on about how the normally minded individual is in thrall to 1.8 million years evolutionary programming and in thrall to their own personal programming that they took on board during their formative years, particularly during the third year of their lives. They have a brain that is shaped and functioning according to that 1.8 million years of slow, grinding change in the development of the human brain. People who meditate for 8 weeks have a different shaped brain after just 8 weeks. Research has recently confirmed that once you start meditating, even by the 5th day, there will be changes in the neural configuration of, in particular, the left prefrontal cortex in the brain. I'll come back to that in a moment, and the subcortical brain. It has been proven recently that people in their 70s, 75 to be precise, because that is the age of the participants in the research in question, who had never meditated in their lives before, have different shaped brains after 8 weeks. But more importantly than that, they have reversed the cognitive decline that comes as a result of aging. In other words, you can meditate yourself neurally younger. You're never going to get back to 25 years of age playing tennis or rugby or whatever, but you can meditate yourself more cognitively agile, neurally younger. More than that, people who start meditating in their mid-70s create new neural pathways in the brain as a result of their triggering the growth of stem cells at 75 years of age. Somebody said to me recently, I'm in my 60s. I don't know if I want to embark on the online program, The Psychology of Success, that I mentioned earlier on. I said, you're young. There are people in their 80s who are owners of that program. There are people in their 70s who are discovering the meaning of life as a result of taking charge of their own state of mind. We do this through meditation. As I sit here recording this, there is at least 30 years of research in relation to the power of meditation. For starters, in relation to how it enables you cope. title of last week's podcast episode was Coping with Everyday Life. There is research that confirms that meditation does the exact opposite to mind and body that stress does to the body. I alluded to this earlier on when I said that stress, even though it is all conjured up in your own mental mind, wreaks havoc in the cardiovascular, immune, and digestive systems. Meditation does the exact opposite. It boosts all those systems. And as I mentioned to you a moment ago, it reconfigures the key components of the brain. I mentioned, first of all, the left prefrontal cortex, what cognitive psychology calls the attentional spotlight, the center of focus, of proper focus in your brain. What decades of research have confirmed is that at the age of 13, that attentional spotlight is turned off as a result of the way in which our brains evolved over 1.8 million years. It's turned off so that it only comes on in life-threatening situations. That's the way our brains were designed for survival. Meditation turns on the attentional spotlight. In other words, you actually start experiencing the reality of the here and now, free of the thoughts that make things seem either good or bad. You simply are. And once you simply are, you are in flow. Once you are in flow, you pick up on what's actually going on. You pick up on the synchronicities to which I referred earlier on. You pick up on the signs that will lead you forward so that all good things come to you. To repeat what I said earlier on, everything bad in your life is as a result of thinking. Even illness, even critical illness. If I can put that another way, a mind that is ill at ease creates a body that is diseased. So even illness is the result of how you are thinking. Don't think, not stop thinking. Explain that in just a moment. Don't think, and everything will begin to flow for you. If I was to say to you, you need to stop thinking, you'd start thinking about stopping thinking. In the same way as if I were to say to somebody who smokes 20 cigarettes a day, stop smoking, they'll start thinking about smoking. You don't need to think about not thinking. That would tie you in even more mental knots. What you need to do is experience what it's like when you're not thinking. What you need to do is to train yourself to be present by turning on your attentional spotlight, by meditating. There is over 20 years research in the field of neuroscience at this stage that demonstrates how meditation doesn't just turn on the attentional spotlight so that now you're here and present and free of thought. It restructures the key components of the subcortical brain that enable you to realize exactly what is going on, know in your gut what you know you need to do as a result of fully being aware of what's going on, and enabling you do what you need to do without thinking about it. It's only thinking that gets in the way of doing. We are, as I've said on numerous occasions over the last number of episodes, we are at our best when we're not thinking. You have to redevelop your ability to not think. And that is as easy as sitting down each morning, preferably sitting down every morning. And for starters, perhaps, closing your eyes and just focusing on how it feels to breathe. Now, it's important the way I've just phrased that, because people often confuse, for example, a breathing meditation with focusing on your breathing. No, you're not focusing on your breathing when you do a breathing meditation. You're using your breathing to focus. It's an entirely different thing. So, as I said a moment ago, you might sit down and close your eyes, and you can do this anywhere. You can do it on the bus, you can do it on the train. Don't do it while you're driving, but you could do it in the office for a couple of minutes. Nobody will notice that you've closed your eyes because 96% of the people around you are dead to the world. Close your eyes, take a couple of breaths, and notice how it feels when you breathe. It is the beginning of living life to the full. It is the beginning of all wisdom.
You've been listening to Succeed, Just Let Go. To get involved, join me in my Facebook group, strangely enough called To Succeed, Just Let Go. And for more information, visit www.willie-horton.com.